The mystery of the Bantu
Hello,
code number
everybody.
1.
Salama, peace and blessings to you and yours. So I know that I have been doing a series called What is Egypt Hiding? But alongside this series, I'm studying a new series that really covers a very interesting topic. And this topic is the mystery of the Bantu code in unlocking biblical language. All right? Okay, so I'm sure if you're watching me, you have a language through which you communicate through. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's sign language. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's still a language. Have you ever wondered? Have you ever wondered, where did language come from? Who coded language? Did human beings code language? Or was it a much more intelligent being like the Most High? Or was it some spirit beings that coded language? Okay? More and more in my research, I'm coming to find out that, language is itself a mystery. Okay? Language is a mystery. And just being an African, the way we've been taught to understand language is that language is a spirit. It can actually affect your destiny, how you think, and how an outcome of what you're expecting. Now, when it comes to studying language, for lack of a better term, on a more, macroscopic level, there are two schools of thought. Okay, when it comes to the idea of how language may have been formed, of how language, morphed and became into what it is now. There are two schools of thought, okay, or paradigms in that respect. The first paradigm believes, they don't believe in the idea that there could be one universal language, and from that universal language, several languages broke out and, branched out and formed various languages. Okay, so that those who just say, yeah, that's nonsense. We don't even really believe that. So, right? First school of thought. Second school of thought believe that indeed, yes, the world did come from one language, one proto-language, all right? And from there, it broke on and changed and transitioned, became all these various languages, beautiful languages that we speak, all right? Now, I am an ardent believer, okay, in Genesis 11. Many of the scientists who actually believe that there was indeed one language, and from that, many other languages were born out of, right? Many of them who believe this tend to have an inclination towards one language, and that seems to be Hebrew, right? Okay, now, so it doesn't mean that everything is laid out in stone. There are two schools of thought. One is torn that there has never been a proto, language, universal language, while the others say yes, there has been, and in fact, some also narrow it down to calling it a proto pre-Babel language. Of course, those who call it a proto pre-Babel language will have a certain affinity for Genesis 11. Okay, because it clearly says that indeed at one point the world was one language and one speech. So it was only a few years after the flood that language, or the proto-universal language, became unglued with the coming of a new character into the scene, who was one of the descendants of Noah, okay? And his name was Nimrod. Nimrod was a son of Cush, okay? And you have Nimrod, all right? Nimrod sought to establish the first hegemony in the world, okay? Nimrod the African, in quotes, okay? His father was Cush, and he sought to establish a universal hegemony All right. And now it wasn't so difficult because they all spoke one language, and they decided to set up a tower through which they could defy God and blaspheme God, because they had gotten to the point where they thought they were so intelligent that they could compete with God. And according to Genesis 11, you do see that very clearly. It says, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower. Let us make for ourselves a name. All right. Now, that was the beginning of the ungluing of universal languages, or the pre-Babel language. And because of that, the Most High, together with the other Elohims, came down and distorted the language, so they were no longer able to understand themselves, and they were scattered abroad. I do believe it was a physical tower, because people need a place to stay and a place to work. But the real tower that would reach up to the heavens, as far as I'm concerned, is a spiritual tower. Okay, a portal. It kind of gives me CERN vibes. Maybe then they were looking for the God particle too. Who knows? There's nothing really new under the sun. All right. Now, please remember that also, with the ungluing of this language, the character that was really behind this was, of course, Nimrod, leading everybody to rebel against God. All right. But we also have to remember that this was also the second wave of hybrids. All right. If you study African languages as well as and connect it to the Hebrew, you'll find that his name means an ogre or a humanoid. The name Nimrod means an ogre or a humanoid. So in this sense, Nimrod was a demigod. He wasn't fully human and he wasn't fully spirit. Now, I do have a recording that I've done of that, a video of that I've done on YouTube, breaking down the name of Nimrod. If you like, you can check me up with the same name, Bosibore Ibongia, and you'll see the breakdown of Nimrod's name. All right. The first wave of hybrids happened with the onset of the birth of Yared, all the way to the times of Noah. All right. And the great deluge happened, or the flood, to get rid of these human hybrids. And most of them were angel and human hybrids. All right. And in that, in essence, they'd be called demigods as well. All right. Now, after the flood, you have the second wave of hybrids that was Nimrod. Right. Now, we have to ask ourselves a very important question. Right. Remember, when European anthropologists come to Africa and they came to study us, they found it so bizarre that there was tribes that would just give them the identity of their tribe as the human beings, or the humans, or the sentient beings. Human is, human is one of those words you can't really find a translation for in African languages, but we'll talk about that in the following episodes. But for now, the Africans, many of these Africans were telling them that we're the humans. That's what the word means in our language. But these Europeans, of course, being know-it-alls, they never stopped to question and ask themselves, what kind of people would call themselves humans, okay, as a name that identifies them? Who calls themselves sentient beings? And I'll give you an example, a very good example of this. Case in point, we have the Hadza people, the hunter-gatherers, one of the oldest people in the planet, okay? The hunter-gatherers were the Hadzabe. Their name means the humans or the sentient beings. Who else? The Bantu people. Their name means the humans, basically, or sentient beings. But these Europeans never stopped to ask an important question. What was it that was happening with these people that they would think to assert themselves as humans? In fact, Bantu means the original beings. Okay? What was happening that they had to assert themselves to let people know that we are sentient beings? Were they living alongside beings that were not human or not sentient? Next up, we'll talk about it. Tune in for part 2.